The carriage wheels clattered against the cobblestones, each jolt a reminder to Eleanora Blackwood that her journey was nearly at its end. Rain lashed against the windows, distorting the view of the desolate countryside that had gradually given way to dense, primeval forest. She pressed her pale fingers against the cold glass, her reflection ghostly in the dying afternoon light. "We approach Thornwick Abbey, miss," the driver called from above, his voice nearly lost in the howling wind. Eleanora nodded, though no one could see her. At 17, this carriage ride represented the final act of her parents' long campaign to remove her from their lives. Lord and Lady Blackwood had never wanted a daughter. Certainly not one born with a strange, silvery birthmark covering half her face, trailing down her neck like delicate frost upon a window pane. A blemish most unfortunate, her mother would say to guests, as if Eleanora were not standing right there. "We've consulted the finest physicians in London." Her father was less subtle. "The girl brings ill fortune," he would mutter after his fourth brandy. "Mark my words." The carriage lurched to a stop, and Eleanora gathered her meagre belongings, a small leather-bound journal, a locket containing a portrait of her grandmother, the only family member who had shown her kindness, and a single change of clothes. The Blackwoods had made it abundantly clear that her new position as companion to the elderly Countess of Thornwick would provide everything else she required. What they hadn't mentioned was that the Countess had been dead for 3 months. "This cannot be right," Eleanora said, staring up at the crumbling Gothic spires of Thornwick Abbey. The massive structure loomed before her, its limestone facade blackened by centuries of exposure. Gargoyles leered from rain-slick cornices, their stone faces twisted in eternal agony. The driver had already deposited her single trunk on the ground. "These be the orders I was given, miss. Thornwick Abbey, northernmost edge of Blackmere County." He tipped his hat. "Good fortune to you." Before Eleanora could protest, the carriage was clattering away, swallowed by the sheets of rain and the encroaching darkness. She stood alone, the wind whipping her chestnut hair around her face, her grey travelling dress already soaked through. "They've abandoned me," she whispered, the truth of it settling into her bones like the damp chill. "They never intended for me to be the Countess's companion. They simply wanted me gone." Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the abbey in stark relief. For a moment, Eleanora thought she saw a figure watching her from one of the highest windows, a tall silhouette, unnaturally still. When the darkness returned, the figure was gone. With no alternative, she approached the massive oak doors. The brass knocker was shaped like a snarling wolf's head, its eyes seeming to follow her movements. Eleanora lifted it and brought it down 3 times, each impact echoing through what she imagined were cavernous halls beyond. Minutes passed. Rain coursed down her back. She was about to knock again when the door swung inward with a groan of ancient hinges. "Who comes to Thornwick at this hour?" The voice belonged to a stooped man with wispy white hair and eyes clouded by cataracts. He held a candelabra, its flames dancing in the draught. "Eleanora Blackwood, sir. I was sent to be companion to the Countess of Thornwick." Her voice wavered slightly. "Though I've heard rumours she may have passed on." The old man's face remained impassive. "The Countess has indeed departed this world, miss. 3 months ago, come the full moon." His head tilted slightly. "Yet here you are." Eleanora swallowed hard. "It seems my parents were misinformed. Or perhaps I was." "Caldwell," the old man said, "I serve as steward of Thornwick Abbey, though there is precious little to steward these days." He stepped aside. "Come in before you catch your death." The entrance hall was cavernous, just as Eleanora had imagined. Faded tapestries depicting hunting scenes covered the walls, while a massive chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, unlit and festooned with cobwebs. The air smelled of dust, decay, and something else, something metallic and sweet that she couldn't quite identify. "The abbey has been mostly abandoned since the Countess's death," Caldwell explained, leading her through the hall. Only myself, the cook Mrs. Thatcher, and young Lily, who helps with the cleaning, remain in service." "Service to whom?" Eleanor asked, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Caldwell's pace faltered almost imperceptibly. "The estate is in transition, miss. Distant relatives and solicitors sort through the legal matters." He glanced at her, his cloudy eyes somehow penetrating. "Though there is another resident, the master of the North Wing. I was not told of any master. Few are told of Count Valerian. He keeps to himself, conducting research of a scholarly nature. You need not concern yourself with him." Caldwell's tone suggested the topic was closed. They ascended a grand staircase to the east wing. Eleanor's room was smaller than she expected, but clean, with a four-poster bed, a writing desk beneath a window overlooking the gardens, and a small fireplace where a modest fire now crackled. "This will be your chamber," Caldwell said. "Mrs. Thatcher will bring you something to eat shortly." He placed the candelabra on the desk. "I would advise against wandering the Abbey at night, Miss Blackwood. Many passages are unstable, and it is easy to become lost." After Caldwell departed, Eleanor sank onto the bed, exhaustion washing over her. Her parents had truly cast her away, sending her to a house in mourning where she had no purpose. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. She had learned long ago that crying solved nothing. A knock at the door preceded the entrance of a plump, red-faced woman carrying a tray. "Mrs. Thatcher, miss. Brought you some stew and bread. Not much, I'm afraid. We weren't expecting guests." "Thank you," Eleanor said. "I apologize for arriving unannounced." Mrs. Thatcher set down the tray, her eyes lingering on Eleanor's birthmark, before quickly darting away. "No matter, child, though it's curious timing, you arriving just as the weather's turned so foul." She moved to stoke the fire. "They say the worst storms always coincide with the Count's activities." "His scholarly research?" Mrs. Thatcher's mouth tightened. "That's what we call it, yes." She straightened up. "Eat your stew before it gets cold. Morning comes early at Thornwick." After finishing her meal, Eleanor changed into her nightgown and climbed into bed. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. The wind howled around the Abbey's towers, and rain lashed against the windows like desperate fingers seeking entry. Somewhere in the distance, she heard what sounded like a wolf's howl, though surely that was impossible. Wolves had been hunted to extinction in England generations ago. She had just begun to drift off when a crash jolted her awake. It came from somewhere below her room, glass breaking, perhaps. Eleanor sat up, listening intently. Silence followed. Then what sounded like low voices in heated discussion. Common sense told her to stay in bed, to heed Caldwell's warning about wandering at night. But Eleanor had always been cursed with curiosity, an unbecoming trait in a young lady, according to her mother. Wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, she took the candelabra and ventured into the hallway. The corridor stretched in both directions, lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors she assumed belonged to the Thornwick line. She moved cautiously toward the staircase, the candle flames casting shifting shadows on the walls. The voices grew louder as she descended. They came from a corridor to the right of the entrance hall, a passage Caldwell hadn't shown her. Eleanor hesitated at the threshold. The hallway beyond was different from the rest of the Abbey she had seen. The walls were lined with strange artifacts, animal skulls, preserved specimens in jars, and what appeared to be ancient weapons. "It cannot continue like this," came Caldwell's voice from behind a partially open door at the corridor's end. "She is but a girl, and clearly abandoned. You overstep, old friend." This second voice was deeper, resonant, with an accent Eleanor couldn't place, something Eastern European, perhaps. "The girl's presence is inconvenient but not insurmountable. She will be gone soon enough. And if she discovers, she will not." Eleanor leaned forward, straining to hear more, when the floorboard beneath her foot creaked loudly. The conversation ceased abruptly. "It seems we have a curious house guest," said the accented voice, sounding almost amused. Before Eleanora could retreat, the door swung wide. Caldwell stood there, his face ashen. Behind him, partially obscured by shadow, stood a tall figure. "Miss Blackwood," Caldwell said, his voice strained. "You should be abed." "I heard a crash," Eleanora said, lifting her chin slightly. "I thought someone might need assistance." "Merely a clumsy accident with a beaker," came the accented voice. The tall figure stepped forward into the light, and Eleanora's breath caught in her throat. The man before her could not have been more than 30, with features so perfect they seemed almost sculpted. High cheekbones, a straight nose, and full lips currently curved into a slight smile. His hair was black as midnight, tied back at the nape of his neck. But it was his eyes that held her transfixed, impossibly dark, like pools of ink that absorbed rather than reflected the candlelight. "Count Alexandru Valerian," he said with a slight bow, "master of Thornwick's North Wing, as I'm sure Caldwell has mentioned." Eleanora cursed awkwardly, nearly spilling wax from the candelabra. "Eleanora Blackwood, sir, the unexpected companion to our deceased countess." His gaze swept over her, lingering on her birthmark without the usual disgust or pity she encountered. Instead, his expression showed something like recognition, quickly masked. "How unfortunate that your journey was in vain." "Yes, well, it seems my parents were misinformed. Or perhaps deliberately misleading," the Count said, his voice soft. "Parents can be so disappointing in their duties to protect their children." Something in his tone made Eleanora shiver. She glanced past him into the room beyond, a laboratory of sorts, filled with strange equipment, open books and glass containers of colored liquids. "Your research," she said. "What field of study occupies you, Count?" A smile played at his lips. "I study life, Miss Blackwood, its preservation, its extension, its very essence." He stepped closer, and Eleanora noticed that despite the late hour and the storm raging outside, his clothing, an impeccably tailored black suit with a crimson waistcoat, was spotless. "But I've made you uncomfortable with my cryptic answers. Forgive me, I rarely have the pleasure of conversing with anyone outside these walls." "The Count values his privacy," Caldwell interjected, shooting a meaningful glance at Valerian. "Indeed I do," the Count agreed. "But I would be a poor host if I did not offer our unexpected guest some hospitality during her stay." He turned to Eleanora. "Perhaps you would join me for dinner tomorrow evening. I seldom take meals with others, but I would make an exception for such an intriguing visitor." Before Eleanora could respond, a distant howl, the same wolf-like sound she'd heard earlier, echoed through the abbey. The Count's expression shifted imperceptibly. "I must return to my work," he said abruptly. "Caldwell will escort you to your chambers, Miss Blackwood, until tomorrow." With that, he stepped back into the laboratory and closed the door firmly. The journey back to her room passed in silence, Caldwell clearly displeased with her nighttime wandering. At her door, he paused. "Miss Blackwood," he said quietly, "while you remain at Thornwick, it would be best to limit your interactions with the Count. He is not accustomed to company, particularly that of young ladies." "He seemed perfectly civil to me," Eleanora replied. "Civil, yes. But the Count harbors secrets that would disturb your sleep were you to know them." Caldwell's cloudy eyes seemed to clear for a moment, fixing her with an intense stare. "Heed my warning. Do not venture into the North Wing again, and do not accept his invitation to dine." With that ominous admonition, he left her. Eleanora returned to bed, but sleep was now impossible. Her mind raced with questions about the mysterious Count, his strange research, and the warnings against him. Outside, the storm continued to rage, and twice more she heard that impossible wolf's howl. As dawn finally broke, casting weak grey light through her window, Eleanora made a decision. Contrary to Caldwell's warning, she would accept the Count's dinner invitation. After all, what did she have to lose? Her parents had abandoned her to this place of darkness and decay. If Count Valerian offered even a temporary respite from her solitude, she would embrace it, regardless of what secrets might lurk behind those ink-black eyes that had regarded her birthmark, not with disgust, but with what had almost seemed like reverence. The following morning dawned grey and cheerless, the storm having passed, but leaving behind a thick mist that clung to the abbey like a funeral shroud. Eleonora rose early, her dreams having been plagued by wolves and shadowy figures. She dressed in the one change of clothes she had brought, a simple blue dress that had seen better days, and ventured downstairs. She found Mrs. Thatcher in the kitchen, kneading dough with powerful hands. The cook acknowledged her with a nod, gesturing toward a small table where a pot of tea and some bread waited. "Good morning, Mrs. Thatcher," Eleonora said, taking a seat. "I hope I'm not disturbing your work." "Been up since 4, I have," the woman replied. "Always work to be done at Thornwick, even with barely anyone to feed these days." She glanced at Eleonora. "Though I hear the Count has taken an interest in you." Eleonora's fingers tightened around her teacup. "News travels quickly. Walls have ears in this place," Mrs. Thatcher said cryptically. She punched the dough with unusual force. "Been here 30 years, I have. Seen things that would turn your hair white." "What sort of things?" Eleonora ventured. The cook's lips pressed into a thin line. "Not my place to say, but I'll tell you this. The Countess wasn't always the frail old woman you've heard about. She was young once, vibrant." Mrs. Thatcher lowered her voice. "Until she crossed paths with him, Count Valerian, but Caldwell suggested the Count was a recent resident." Mrs. Thatcher laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humour. "Recent? The Count has been at Thornwick longer than anyone knows. Comes and goes, he does. Disappears for years, then returns as if no time has passed." She leaned closer. "And he don't age, miss, not a day." A chill ran through Eleonora despite the kitchen's warmth. "That's impossible." "Is it now?" Mrs. Thatcher resumed kneading. "That mark on your face. Unusual, ain't it? Some things in this world defy explanation." Eleonora instinctively touched her birthmark. "How did the Countess die?" The cook's hands stilled. "They say it was her heart. Natural causes." She didn't meet Eleonora's eyes, though she was afraid near the end, kept her door locked, wouldn't let anyone in but Caldwell, and only during daylight. Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13, with a dusting of freckles across her nose and bright copper hair pulled into a messy braid. "Lily," Mrs. Thatcher said, "this is Miss Blackwood. She'll be staying with us for a time." The girl curtsied awkwardly. "Pleasure, miss." Her eyes widened slightly at Eleonora's birthmark, but without the usual revulsion, more like fascination. "Lily helps with the cleaning," Mrs. Thatcher explained. "Orphan from the village. The Countess took her in last year." "And now that the Countess is gone?" Eleonora asked. "The Count keeps me on," Lily said, her voice small but clear. "Says I have nimble fingers and don't ask questions." "Enough gossip," Mrs. Thatcher interrupted. "Lily, show Miss Blackwood the grounds if she likes. Fresh air will do her good after yesterday's journey." Despite the damp chill, Eleonora welcomed the chance to explore. Lily proved a surprisingly knowledgeable guide, leading her through Thornwick's overgrown gardens and explaining the history of various crumbling statues and structures, with the serious air of a much older person. "The abbey was built on the ruins of something much older," Lily explained, as they approached a moss-covered stone circle at the garden's edge. "Pagan place, they say. The villagers won't come near it, especially at night." "Is that why they avoid the abbey?" Eleonora asked. Lily shook her head. "They avoid it because of him, the Count." She glanced nervously at the north wing's windows. "They say he takes people sometimes, villagers who wander too close after dark." "Takes them where?" The girl shrugged. "They don't come back." She kicked at a loose stone. "My brother Thomas disappeared last winter, 3 nights before Christmas. He'd gone hunting in the forest near the abbey." Her young face hardened. "Mother died of grief a month later. That's when the Countess took me in." Eleonora's heart ached for the child. "I'm so sorry, Lily." "The Count has laboratories beneath the abbey," Lily continued, lowering her voice. I've seen the entrance, a heavy iron door behind the wine cellar. Sometimes I hear noises coming from down there, like animals, but not. A gust of wind swept through the garden, causing both girls to shiver. Eleanora was about to suggest they return inside when movement from one of the north wing windows caught her attention. A figure stood there, watching them, unmistakably Count Valerian. Even at this distance, she could feel the intensity of his gaze. "He's watching," Lily whispered, fear evident in her voice. "He always knows when people talk about him." As if hearing the girl's words, the Count raised a hand in greeting, then disappeared from view. "We should go back," Lily said urgently. "It's not safe to be outside when he's awake." "When he's awake?" Eleanora repeated. "What do you mean?" But Lily was already hurrying toward the Abbey, leaving Eleanora to follow with more questions than ever swirling in her mind. By late afternoon, restlessness drove Eleanora to explore the Abbey's east wing, where her room was located. Unlike the north wing, with its laboratory and strange artifacts, this section seemed more traditionally appointed, faded but once elegant furnishings, portraits of stern aristocrats, and several small sitting rooms that appeared untouched for years. In one such room she discovered a modest library. Dust covered most surfaces, but it was clear someone had recently disturbed some of the books. A volume lay open on a reading desk, and several others had been removed from shelves and placed in a neat stack nearby. Curious, Eleanora examined the open book. It contained genealogies of English noble families, with one entry marked by a ribbon, the Blackwood lineage. Her own family. Why would someone at Thornwick be researching her ancestry? She moved to the stack of books, finding works on obscure medical conditions, ancient folklore, and, most surprisingly, a leather-bound volume entirely in Romanian. Though she couldn't read the text, the illustrations were clear enough, drawings of human anatomy, particularly focusing on the circulatory system, interspersed with what appeared to be alchemical symbols. Unusual reading material for a young lady. Eleanora whirled around to find Caldwell in the doorway, his cloudy eyes somehow still managing to convey disapproval. "I was merely exploring," she said, straightening her spine, "since it seems I have no actual duties here." "Indeed." Caldwell entered the room, closing the door behind him. "Miss Blackwood, I understand you intend to dine with the Count this evening. He invited me, yes. I must insist you reconsider." The old man's voice took on an urgency she hadn't heard before. "The Count is not what he seems." Eleanora gestured to the books. "And what is he exactly? These materials suggest someone with medical or scientific interests, unusual perhaps, but hardly sinister." Caldwell's expression darkened. "There are things beyond your understanding at work here. The Count's interest in you is concerning." "Because of my birthmark?" Eleanora touched the silvery pattern on her cheek. He did look at it strangely. "He recognized it," Caldwell said quietly. "As did I, though I hoped I was mistaken." A chill ran through Eleanora. "Recognized it? What do you mean?" Caldwell seemed to debate with himself before continuing. "Your birthmark follows the exact pattern of the constellation Lupus, the wolf. The same pattern appears in certain ancient texts dealing with transformations." "Transformations? You speak in riddles, Mr. Caldwell." "The Count believes your birthmark marks you as one who can withstand the change," Caldwell said, each word seeming to cost him effort. "One who might survive what others cannot." Eleanora's patience wore thin. "Speak plainly, sir. What change? What does the Count want with me?" "A companion," Caldwell answered, his voice barely audible. "An immortal companion." Before Eleanora could demand clarification, a clock somewhere in the Abbey struck 5, causing Caldwell to start. "The sun sets in an hour," he said urgently. "If you insist on this dinner, you must promise to leave at the first sign of strangeness. Do not drink any wine he offers, and do not under any circumstances allow him to keep you past midnight." With those cryptic warnings he departed, leaving Eleanora with a growing sense of unease, but also undeniably, curiosity. Part of her knew she should heed Caldwell's warnings, perhaps even find a way to leave Thornwick entirely. But where would she go? Back to parents who had effectively abandoned her? To a society that had only ever viewed her as a marked curiosity? At least here, someone seemed to find her mark significant rather than shameful. As twilight fell, Eleanora prepared for dinner, washing her face and attempting to make her one good dress presentable. She had no jewelry save her grandmother's locket, which she fastened around her neck. The small portrait inside was her only connection to family that had shown her kindness. At precisely 7 o'clock, a soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Lily, looking nervous in a clean apron. "The Count awaits you in the North Wing dining room," the girl said, bobbing a curtsy. "I'm to escort you." The journey through the Abbey's corridors was longer than Eleanora expected, taking them through passages she hadn't seen before. The walls seemed to close in as they progressed, the portraits watching their passage with painted eyes that somehow conveyed warning. "Does the Count often entertain guests?" Eleanora asked, trying to dispel her growing nervousness. Lily shook her head. "Never seen him dine with anyone before, miss. He takes his meals alone in his chambers most nights." She hesitated. "Some nights he doesn't eat at all." They reached an ornate door carved with intricate woodland scenes, hunting parties, forest creatures, and at the center a magnificent wolf. Lily knocked twice, then scurried away before Eleanora could stop her. "Enter," came the Count's voice from within. The dining room beyond was unlike anything Eleanora had expected. Where the rest of the Abbey was decaying grandeur, this room was impeccably maintained. Rich crimson draperies, gleaming silver candelabras, and a long table of polished ebony. A fire roared in a massive fireplace, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Count Valerian stood at the far end, even more striking than he had appeared the previous night. He wore a perfectly tailored black evening coat over a burgundy waistcoat, his raven hair loose around his shoulders, those impossibly dark eyes fixed on her as she entered, and something like hunger flickered in their depths before being quickly masked by a courtly smile. "Miss Blackwood," he said, his accented voice warm, "you honor me with your presence." He crossed the room with fluid grace and took her hand, raising it to his lips. His touch was cool, his skin pale as marble against hers. "Thank you for the invitation, Count Valerian," she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Though I confess, I'm curious why you would dine with a stranger when you seem to value your privacy so highly." He laughed, a rich sound that seemed to reverberate through her very bones. "Direct, aren't you? A refreshing quality." He gestured toward the table, where two place settings awaited at opposite ends. "Please, be seated. As for your question, perhaps I grow weary of solitude after so many years of it." Eleanora took her place, noting that while her setting included multiple courses, soup, roasted fowl, vegetables, the Count's held only a single crystal goblet filled with dark red liquid. "You're not dining?" she asked. "I observe certain dietary restrictions," he replied, taking his seat. "But please enjoy. Mrs. Thatcher may be superstitious, but her cooking is beyond reproach." Remembering Caldwell's warning about wine, Eleanora eyed the goblet at her own place. "And what am I drinking?" "Water," the Count said, amusement coloring his tone. "Caldwell warned you against my wine, didn't he? The old man is protective of young ladies who visit Thornwick, perhaps with good reason." Eleanora felt a chill at his words. "And how many young ladies have visited?" The Count's expression grew distant. "Few. The last was nearly 50 years ago." He seemed to catch himself. "That is, according to the Abbey's records. Family history." They ate in silence for a few minutes, or rather, Eleanora ate while the Count watched her with unsettling intensity. The food was indeed excellent, but she found her appetite diminishing under his gaze. "Your birthmark," he said suddenly. "You've had it since birth?" Eleanora's hand instinctively rose to her cheek. "Yes. My parents consulted numerous physicians, but none could explain it or remove it." They wish to remove it? The Count frowned. How tragically short-sighted. Do you know what it resembles? Caldwell mentioned a constellation, Lupus. The Count's eyes widened fractionally. Caldwell has been forthcoming, it seems. Yes, your mark follows the wolf constellation precisely. In certain ancient traditions, such marks were considered divine gifts, signs that the bearer was destined for transformation. What sort of transformation? Eleonora asked, setting down her fork. From mortal to something more. The Count rose and moved to the fire, his silhouette casting an elongated shadow across the room. Humanity is so fragile, Miss Blackwood, so temporary. Have you never longed for more than your allotted handful of decades? I've scarcely lived 2 decades yet, Eleonora replied. It seems premature to fear their end. Wise words. He turned back to her, firelight illuminating half his face while leaving the other in shadow. Yet I suspect you understand isolation and loneliness better than most. Your parents sent you away, did they not? Discarded you like something unwanted, something marked. Pain lanced through Eleonora at the truth of his words. They never wanted me, because they feared what they did not understand. The Count's voice softened. But I understand, Eleonora. I have spent centuries studying such marks, such potential. Centuries? Eleonora echoed, her heart beginning to race. You speak as though I have lived far longer than any man should. He smiled, revealing teeth that seemed just slightly too sharp. Perhaps I have. A distant howl penetrated the room's heavy atmosphere, the same wolf sound Eleonora had heard the previous night. The Count's expression shifted, something primal briefly overtaking his aristocratic features. You hear them? He said. Not a question, but a statement. The wolves. Most humans cannot. Wolves have been extinct in England for generations, Eleonora said, though her certainty wavered. Common wolves, yes. The Count moved closer, now standing beside her chair. But these are not common wolves, Miss Blackwood. They are like me, caught between worlds, between forms. Fear and fascination warred within Eleonora. What are you saying? That Thornwick Abbey stands on ancient ground, where the veil between worlds grows thin. That your birthmark is not a disfigurement, but a sign. That I have waited longer than you can imagine for someone who might survive the change. The howl came again, closer now, accompanied by others, a chorus of eerie cries that seemed to surround the abbey. They sense you, the Count whispered, his cool fingers brushing her birthmark. As I sensed you the moment you arrived. The pack calls to you, Eleonora. She jerked away from his touch, rising so quickly her chair clattered to the floor. You speak of impossibilities, of fairy tales and monsters. Do I? The Count didn't move to stop her retreat. Then how do you explain your mark? The dreams of running through forests on 4 legs that I wager have haunted you since childhood. The way your senses sharpen with the full moon. Eleonora gasped, for he spoke of things she had never told anyone. The vivid dreams of racing through moonlit woods, the strange heightening of her senses during certain lunar phases. Tonight is the full moon, the Count continued, his voice hypnotic. The perfect time for you to embrace your true nature, to join us. Us? Eleonora backed toward the door. The wolves, you mean? We are more than wolves, more than human. The Count's eyes seemed to glow in the firelight. We are both, and neither, cursed or blessed, depending on one's perspective. The Abbey's clock began to strike the hour, and Eleonora realized with a start that she had lost track of time. How long had she been here? Caldwell had warned her not to stay past midnight. What time is it? She demanded. Nearly 9, the Count replied. Early yet. The transformation cannot begin until midnight. Transformation? Eleonora's hand found the door handle behind her. I have no intention of transforming into anything, Count Valerian. His smile was sad now. Your intentions matter little. The change has already begun, from the moment you stepped onto Thornwick's grounds. The wolf constellation marked you at birth, but it requires activation, proximity to one of our kind during the full moon. Horror dawned on Eleonora as the implications became clear. My parents knew. They sent me here deliberately, didn't they? They knew what would happen. The Blackwoods have a long history with creatures like me, the Count confirmed. Your grandmother bore the same mark, though hers was fainter. She resisted the change until her death. The locket around Eleonora's neck suddenly felt heavy. Her grandmother, the only family member who had shown her kindness, had she borne the same curse? I need to leave, Eleonora said, turning the handle. The door refused to budge. Let me out. I cannot, the Count said, genuine regret in his voice. Not now. The pack has scented you. If you leave these walls before the transformation, they will tear you apart in their frenzy to claim you. As if to confirm his words, snarls and scratching sounds suddenly emanated from beyond the abbey's walls, the sounds of large animals circling, waiting. You have 3 hours until midnight, the Count said. 3 hours to accept what you are becoming. I can guide you through it, ensure you retain your human mind and memories. Without me, the change will destroy your sanity, leaving only the wolf. Eleonora's mind raced. Was he telling the truth? Were the wolves truly outside, or was this an elaborate deception? And if he spoke truly, what choice did she have? I need time to think, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. The Count nodded. Of course. Return to your room if you wish. But remember, as midnight approaches, the pull will become irresistible. When it does, come to the North Tower. I will be waiting. With a wave of his hand, the door behind her unlocked. Eleonora fled, her heart pounding as she navigated the abbey's darkened corridors. The howls of the wolves followed her, seeming to echo from every direction. She burst into her room, bolting the door behind her. Her reflection in the small mirror above her wash basin caught her attention, and she gasped in shock. Her birthmark, the silvery pattern that had always resembled frost, was now visibly glowing with a faint blue light, pulsing in rhythm with her racing heart. As the moon rose higher in the night sky, visible through her window like a watchful eye, Eleonora felt something stirring within her, something wild and ancient that had always been there, waiting to be awakened. And despite her fear, a part of her, a part she had never acknowledged, welcomed it with terrible joy. The moon's pale light streamed through Eleonora's window, casting long shadows across her chamber floor. She paced frantically, her trembling fingers repeatedly tracing the glowing pattern on her cheek. Each passing minute brought the constellation mark to life with greater intensity, its silvery blue light now bright enough to illuminate the room even when she extinguished her candle. "This cannot be real," she whispered. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The mark pulsed with her quickening heartbeat, and with each pulse came new sensations. Scents she'd never detected before flooded her nostrils. Sounds from distant parts of the abbey reached her ears with startling clarity, and her vision sharpened until she could count the dust motes dancing in the moonbeams. A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Miss Blackwood!" Caldwell's voice came low and urgent. "May I enter?" Eleonora hesitated, then unlocked the door. The old steward slipped inside, his face ashen when he saw her glowing mark. "It's progressing faster than I feared," he murmured, setting down a small leather satchel. "We don't have much time." "You knew," she accused, anger flaring. "You knew what I was, what would happen to me here, yet you said nothing." "I tried to warn you without revealing too much," Caldwell said, his cloudy eyes meeting hers directly. "The Count has ways of knowing when his secrets are shared. But yes, I recognized your mark the moment you arrived." "What is happening to me?" Eleonora demanded. Caldwell sighed heavily. "The simplest explanation is that you are becoming what the Count is, a lycanthrope, a werewolf. Though that crude term hardly captures the complexity of the condition, despite everything she'd witnessed, hearing it stated so plainly sent a shock through Eleonora. That's impossible. Such creatures exist only in folklore and penny dreadfuls. And yet here you stand, your birthmark aglow, your senses heightening by the minute. Caldwell opened his satchel, removing a small silver flask. "Your family has known of the Count's nature for generations. The Blackwoods and Thornwicks have a complicated history. Enemies at times, allies at others. Then my parents truly did send me here knowing what would happen," Eleanora said, the betrayal cutting deeper than she'd imagined possible. "They likely believed you were already lost to them, the mark growing stronger as you approached adulthood, yes? Strange episodes during full moons, unexplained fevers, vivid dreams of running through forests." Eleanora nodded mutely, recalling the symptoms that had grown more pronounced in recent years, symptoms her parents had regarded with increasing fear and disgust. "The transformation can be brutal without guidance," Caldwell continued. "Many don't survive their first change. The Count can shepherd you through it safely, preserving your human mind and memories. That is what he offers. And what does he expect in return?" Eleanora asked sharply. Caldwell's expression darkened. "Companionship. Eternity grows lonely, and the Count has outlived many potential companions. He believes your bloodline makes you strong enough to survive not just the transformation, but the centuries that would follow." From somewhere outside came the chorus of howls again, closer now. Eleanora felt a strange pull in response, an urge to answer that call that took all her willpower to resist. "The pack grows restless," Caldwell said, offering her the silver flask. "This contains an extract of wolfsbane and other herbs. It won't prevent the transformation, but it will slow it, give you more time to decide your path." Eleanora accepted the flask. "There's something you're not telling me." The old man hesitated. "The Countess, she wore the mark as well, though fainter than yours. She was to be the Count's companion decades ago. What happened to her? She refused him, took the potion I gave her, and locked herself away each full moon for 50 years. It was a half-life. The wolf inside never stopped trying to break free." Caldwell's voice dropped to a whisper. "Her heart gave out 3 months ago, but in truth, she'd been dying by inches for years, caught between human and wolf, belonging to neither world." Eleanora uncorked the flask, the bitter scent making her newly sensitive nose wrinkle. "And that is to be my fate if I resist, unless you leave Thornwick immediately. But the pack surrounds the abbey tonight. They would tear you apart before you reach the village." Caldwell moved to the door. "The potion buys you perhaps an hour. Use it wisely." After Caldwell departed, Eleanora sank onto her bed, the flask cold in her palm. The moon continued its relentless climb, and with each passing minute, the call of the wolves grew more compelling, like a melody she'd always known, but never heard properly until now. A new scent suddenly caught her attention, earthy and wild, with undertones of something metallic. Blood. She moved to her window and gazed out into the moonlit gardens below. There, at the edge of the tree line, stood an enormous wolf, its coat silver-grey in the moonlight. It stared directly up at her window, intelligent eyes reflecting the same bluish glow as her birthmark. As she watched, transfixed, the wolf threw back its head and howled, a sound so haunting and beautiful that tears sprang to Eleanora's eyes. Without conscious thought, she found herself pressing a hand against the glass, leaning toward that sound, that creature. The wolf lowered its head, meeting her gaze once more, then turned and loped back into the forest. A message had been delivered, though Eleanora couldn't quite decipher its meaning. She looked down at the flask, then at her reflection in the window glass, her birthmark now resembling a constellation of tiny stars etched into her skin. The clock in the hall struck 11, 1 hour until midnight. Decision made, she set the flask aside. She would not spend her life trapped between worlds like the Countess, but neither would she blindly surrender to the Count's designs. If transformation was inevitable, she would face it on her terms, armed with as much knowledge as possible. She needed to see the laboratory beneath the abbey. Slipping into the corridor, Eleanora found the abbey unnervingly quiet, as if the very stones held their breath in anticipation of what midnight would bring. Her enhanced senses guided her past the kitchens toward the wine cellar Lily had mentioned. The heavy oak door stood ajar, a faint light flickering beyond. Descending the stone steps, she navigated between dusty racks of bottles until she reached the rear wall, where, just as Lily had described, a massive iron door stood slightly open. A thin ribbon of light spilled through the gap. Eleonora hesitated, every instinct warning her to turn back. Yet the pull of answers was too strong. Holding her breath, she slipped through the opening. The laboratory beyond defied her expectations. Where she had imagined a dank dungeon of horrors, she found instead a vast, circular chamber hewn from bedrock, illuminated by dozens of oil lamps. The walls were lined with bookshelves containing thousands of volumes, interspersed with glass cabinets displaying artifacts and specimens. At the center stood a massive stone table, its surface carved with intricate symbols that matched the pattern of her birthmark. But what drew her attention most were the detailed anatomical drawings covering one wall, human forms in various stages of transformation into wolves, the process documented with scientific precision alongside notations in multiple languages. Some sketches depicted failed transformations, the bodies caught grotesquely between forms. Fascinating, isn't it? The Count's voice came from behind her. The intersection of science and what most would call magic. I've documented every aspect of lycanthropy over 7 centuries. Eleonora whirled to face him, backing against the stone table. 7 centuries? You're claiming to be over 700 years old. 743, to be precise. The Count stepped into the lamplight. He had changed from his dinner attire into a simple black shirt and trousers. Though after the first few centuries, one stops counting so meticulously. Why did you bring me here? Why the Blackwood family specifically? Because your bloodline is unique. He gestured to a genealogical chart on one wall that traced the Blackwood family back nearly a millennium. Your ancestors encountered my kind in the Carpathian Mountains during the Crusades. Rather than destroying us, as most humans attempted, they studied us, eventually interbreeding with us. The resulting bloodline carries dormant lycanthropic traits that activate under specific conditions, like proximity to a full-blooded werewolf during the full moon, Eleonora said, connecting the pieces. Precisely. The Count's dark eyes gleamed with approval. Most humans who attempt the transformation die horribly, their bodies rejecting the change. Others survive physically but lose their minds, becoming the mindless monsters of legend. But your blood, your particular branch of the Blackwood line, carries the potential for a complete, controlled transformation. Eleonora's gaze returned to the drawings of failed transformations. And if you're wrong about my potential? I'm not. His certainty was absolute. Your birthmark is the most pronounced I've ever seen. The wolf constellation perfectly formed, in the exact position that indicates alpha potential. Alpha? The term triggered something in Eleonora's memory, her grandmother's voice, telling her bedtime stories about wolf packs and their leaders. The pack outside needs guidance, the Count explained, moving closer. As do I. For too long, I've shouldered the burden alone, watching companions age and die, or worse, descend into madness. But you... His cool fingers touched her glowing birthmark. You could be my equal, my alpha female. The contact sent a shock through Eleonora's system, the mark flaring brighter. Something wild surged within her, responding to his touch with an intensity that frightened her. And if I refuse? She asked, pulling away. If I take Caldwell's potion and resist like the Countess did? The Count's expression darkened. Then you condemn yourself to her fate. A half-existence, neither fully human nor wolf, your body at war with itself until it finally surrenders to death. His voice softened. I would not wish that on anyone, least of all you. The Abbey's clock began to strike the quarter hour, 45 minutes until midnight. I need to understand everything before I decide, Eleonora insisted. What exactly happens at midnight? What will the transformation feel like? The Count's eyes took on a distant quality. The first transformation is difficult to describe. Your body will reshape itself, bone, muscle, skin, all changing to accommodate your wolf form. There is pain, yes, but also exhilaration. Your senses, already heightening, will explode into full awareness. You'll perceive the world as you never have before. And my human mind? Will I remember who I am? With proper guidance, yes. That is what I offer you. Control over the beast, retention of your human consciousness. Without guidance, the wolf mind dominates, at least initially. He moved to a cabinet and removed a small silver box. This ointment, applied to your birthmark before the transformation begins, will ease the physical transition. Eleonora studied him carefully. There was something he wasn't telling her. Something crucial. And afterward? Once I've transformed? What then? A subtle tension entered the Count's posture. Then you join the pack for your first hunt. It is necessary. The wolf must feed. On what? Eleonora pressed, though she feared she already knew the answer. The Count met her gaze directly. The hunt is part of our nature. We take what the forest provides, deer, wild boar. But yes, occasionally, human prey as well. Horror washed through her. You kill people. We are predators, Eleonora. It is what we are. His voice remained calm, matter-of-fact. Though I choose my human prey carefully, the cruel, the wicked, those who themselves prey on the innocent. Like judge, jury, and executioner, she said bitterly, playing God. Gods are myth. Wolves are real. The Count set down the silver box. I won't lie to you. The hunger for the hunt is powerful, especially for new wolves. The taste for blood is intoxicating. A terrible suspicion formed in Eleonora's mind. Lily's brother Thomas, the one who disappeared last winter while hunting near the Abbey, did you... The Count's silence was answer enough. He was just a boy, Eleonora cried. It was regrettable, the Count finally said. It was not my choice, but one of the younger wolves, less disciplined. I took Lily in as penance, protected her, after your pack killed her brother and caused her mother's death from grief, Eleonora said, disgust rising within her. And now you expect me to join you? To become a murderer? I expect you to embrace your true nature, the Count replied, an edge entering his voice. The choice is simple, though not easy. Transformation and life, or resistance and slow death. The Countess chose the latter. I had hoped you would be wiser. The clock struck the half-hour. 30 minutes remained. A sudden commotion from above broke the tension, shouting, the sound of breaking glass, and underneath it all, growls and snarls. The Count's head snapped up, his expression alarmed. The pack grows impatient. They've breached the Abbey's outer defences. Eleonora felt panic rising. I thought they answered to you. Can't you control them? They sense your transformation approaching and are drawn to it. A potential alpha female awakening. He broke off, listening. They're coming for you. We must begin the preparation now, or you'll have no chance of controlling your first change. No, Eleonora backed away. I need more time. I need to think. There is no more time. The Count's calm facade cracked. Choose now, Eleonora. Let me guide you through this, or face the pack alone, untrained, unprepared. The sounds of chaos grew closer, furniture splintering, Lily screaming, Mrs. Thatcher shouting, and beneath it all the padding of heavy paws on stone. Eleonora felt her body responding to the approaching wolves, her heart racing, muscles trembling with the urge to change, to meet them as one of their own. The birthmark burned now, the glow so bright it cast shadows around the laboratory. They're coming for me, she whispered, terror and exhilaration mingling in her veins. Yes. The Count moved to a weapons cabinet, removing an ancient silver dagger. And they will tear you apart in their frenzy unless you complete the transformation under my guidance. Or unless I escape Thornwick altogether, Eleonora said, her mind racing. There must be tunnels beneath the Abbey, escape routes. An estate this old always has secrets. The Count's expression confirmed her suspicion. The tunnels are a maze. You'd never find your way out before midnight, especially not with the pack hunting you. A crash from the cellar stairs announced that the wolves had discovered their location. Low growls echoed through the iron door. "There's no more time," the Count insisted, offering her the silver box. "The ointment, now!" Eleonora looked from the box to the dagger in his other hand. "What's the dagger for?" A shadow crossed his face. "The transformation requires blood, specifically the blood of the one who initiates you into the pack. My blood. And that's all," she pressed, instinctively sensing there was more. The Count hesitated, then spoke quickly as scratching sounds came from the iron door. "The transformation binds us, alpha male to alpha female, a blood bond that cannot be broken except by death." "You mean to trap me here forever?" Eleonora realized, backing away. "To bind me to you for eternity. To save you," he countered, "to give you immortality, power, freedom from human constraints, at the cost of my humanity, my free will." Eleonora's back hit a bookshelf. "No, I refuse." The Count's expression hardened. "Then you die tonight, either torn apart by the pack or destroyed by a transformation you cannot control." He advanced on her, dagger raised. "I need only a few drops of your blood mixed with mine to begin the ritual. You'll thank me when it's done." As he lunged forward, Eleonora's newfound reflexes surprised them both. She ducked beneath his arm, her body moving with inhuman speed. Grabbing a heavy brass lamp, she swung it at his head with all her strength. The Count staggered, momentarily stunned. Eleonora seized the opportunity, darting for the iron door. Behind her, he recovered quickly. "Stop!" he commanded. "The pack is just beyond that door. Better them than you," she shot back, pulling the door open. To her shock, it wasn't wolves that tumbled through, but Caldwell, Mrs. Thatcher, and Lily, their faces etched with terror. "Run, miss!" Caldwell gasped. "The wolves, they've gone mad!" From somewhere above came a chorus of howls, followed by the sound of shattering glass and splintering wood. "The North Tower," Mrs. Thatcher said, clutching Lily protectively. "They're destroying everything in their path to reach this chamber." The Count cursed in a language Eleonora didn't recognize. "The pack senses your potential. They want to claim you themselves, without my interference." He turned to Eleonora. "We're out of options. The ritual or death. Choose now." The Abbey's clock began to toll 11. 1 hour until midnight. Eleonora looked from the Count to the terrified servants, her mind racing. There had to be another way, something beyond the false choice he presented. "The tunnels," she said suddenly. "Caldwell, you must know them." The old steward nodded reluctantly. "I do, but they lead into the forest where more of the pack likely waits." "Not all tunnels," Lily piped up, her young voice steady despite her fear. "The one behind the east bookcase leads to the old church ruins by the river. Thomas showed me before he—" She broke off, glancing at the Count. Hope flared in Eleonora's chest. "How far to the river?" "Half a mile," Lily said. "But once you're there, you could take the boat downstream to the next village." The Count moved with blinding speed, placing himself between Eleonora and the exit. "You won't make it. Even if you reach the river, the change will come at midnight wherever you are. Without the ritual, without my guidance, you'll lose yourself to the wolf." Eleonora's birthmark pulsed with painful intensity now, her entire body humming with energy, demanding release. Yet amid the physical sensations, a moment of clarity struck her. "You're lying," she said, the realization dawning. "Not about the transformation, that's real enough, but about needing your blood, your guidance. My grandmother resisted for decades. She never completed the ritual, never bound herself to you." The Count's expression confirmed her suspicion. "She suffered for that choice, but she made it herself." Eleonora turned to Caldwell. "The potion. Give me the rest of it." The old steward hesitated, then drew a second flask from his pocket. "It will not prevent what comes at midnight, only give you clarity through it." A crash from above, closer now. The wolves were nearly upon them. "Caldwell, take Mrs. Thatcher and Lily through the tunnel." Eleonora commanded, a new authority entering her voice. "I'll follow." "And me?" the Count asked, his dark eyes unreadable. "Will you leave me to face the pack alone?" For a moment, Eleonora felt a flicker of sympathy for this ancient, lonely creature. Then she remembered Thomas, Lily's brother, and countless others who had died to satisfy the pack's hunger over the centuries. "They are your pack," she said coldly. "Control them, if you can. If not," she met his gaze directly, "perhaps it's time for a new alpha." As the words left her lips, something shifted in the air between them. The Count's eyes widened in genuine alarm. "You cannot mean to challenge—" He broke off as the ceiling above them cracked, plaster raining down. Caldwell was already pulling aside the bookcase, revealing a dark passageway beyond. "Quickly!" Eleonora backed toward the tunnel, flask in hand, never taking her eyes off the Count. "I don't know what I am becoming," she told him, "but I will face it on my terms, not yours." The ceiling gave way with a tremendous crash. Through the dust and debris, massive wolves began dropping into the laboratory, silver-grey, black, russet, their eyes glowing with the same unearthly blue as her birthmark. They formed a circle, not attacking, but waiting, watching. The largest wolf, silver-grey, the same one she had seen from her window, padded forward, its gaze moving from Eleonora to the Count and back again, as if assessing them both. "The alpha female approaches her awakening," the Count said quietly. "They come to witness, to welcome, or to challenge." Eleonora's body trembled on the edge of change. Midnight still nearly an hour away, yet the transformation already beginning to overtake her. The flask of potion felt heavy in her hand. "Go!" she ordered Caldwell and the others. "I'll follow when I can." As the servants disappeared into the tunnel, Eleonora uncorked the flask, the bitter scent filling her nostrils. The wolves growled, sensing her intention. "If you drink that, you choose suffering," the Count warned. "You choose to fight your nature rather than embrace it." "No," Eleonora replied, raising the flask. "I choose freedom." As the liquid touched her lips, the silver wolf lunged. Not at her, but at the Count, its massive body colliding with his. The pack followed their leader, surging forward as one. The last thing Eleonora saw before she plunged into the darkness of the tunnel was the Count disappearing beneath a writhing mass of fur and fangs, his inhuman scream echoing through the ancient stones of Thornwick Abbey. The tunnel swallowed her. Midnight approached, and the change, whatever it might bring, waited in the darkness ahead. The wolves' howls pursued Eleonora through the winding tunnel, their eerie chorus echoing off the ancient stone walls. The passageway twisted beneath the abbey grounds, descending deeper into darkness before gradually sloping upward again. Her fingertips traced the damp stones as she ran, the bitter taste of Caldwell's potion still burning on her tongue. With each passing minute, her transformation progressed despite the elixir's influence. Her bones ached as if preparing to reshape themselves, and her senses grew impossibly sharper. She could smell the river ahead, hear the rapid heartbeats of small creatures scurrying in the walls, see with perfect clarity, despite the near-total darkness. The mark on her face blazed like blue fire, illuminating the tunnel with its ghostly light. "Miss Blackwood!" Caldwell's voice floated back to her. "Hurry!" Less than half an hour remains before midnight. She quickened her pace, ignoring the strange elasticity in her limbs, the way her fingers seemed to lengthen and contract with each racing heartbeat. The potion was fighting the transformation, creating a war within her body that threatened to tear her apart. When Eleonora finally emerged from the tunnel's mouth, she found herself standing amidst the ruins of an ancient church. Crumbling stone arches framed a star-filled sky, and directly above, the full moon hung like a watchful eye. Beyond the ruins, she could see the silvery ribbon of the river, and on its bank stood Caldwell, Mrs. Thatcher and Lily beside a small rowboat. "Quickly, child!" Mrs. Thatcher called, gesturing frantically. Eleonora stumbled forward, but a sudden spasm dropped her to her knees. The Abbey's distant clock tower began to chime the 3/4 hour. 15 minutes until midnight. I won't make it, she gasped as Caldwell rushed to her side. The change is coming too quickly. The old steward's cloudy eyes were wide with fear. The potion should have given you more time. Perhaps. Eleonora struggled to form words as another spasm racked her body. Perhaps the Count was right about one thing. My bloodline is strong. Too strong for the potion to fully suppress. Behind them, howls erupted from the tunnel entrance. The pack had followed. Get Lily to safety, Eleonora commanded, pushing herself to her feet with trembling arms. Take the boat. I'll lead them away. We can't leave you, Lily cried, tears streaming down her freckled face. Eleonora managed a pained smile. You must. Whatever I become at midnight, I don't want you to witness it. Mrs. Thatcher pulled Lily toward the boat. But Caldwell hesitated. There's something I must tell you, he said urgently. The locket, your grandmother's locket. It contains more than just her portrait. Eleonora's hand flew to the small, silver oval hanging at her throat. What do you mean? Open it. Not just the portrait side, the other compartment. She left it for you, knowing this day might come. With shaking fingers, Eleonora opened the familiar side of the locket, revealing her grandmother's gentle face. But when she pressed a tiny catch she'd never noticed before, the opposite side sprang open as well. Inside was a tightly folded piece of parchment and a small lock of silver-grey hair. There's no time to read it now, Caldwell said as more howls, closer now, pierced the night. But know this, your grandmother found another way. Neither slave to the Count nor tortured by resisting the change, she discovered a third path. What path? Eleonora demanded. But Caldwell was already backing toward the boat. Trust your blood, trust the wolf. But command it, do not let it command you. With those cryptic words, he joined the others in the small craft. Mrs. Thatcher pushed off from the shore, and the river's current quickly carried them away into the darkness. Eleonora clutched the locket, a strange calm settling over her despite the approaching wolves and the imminent transformation. Her grandmother had found another way. Whatever that meant, it offered hope, something beyond the Count's cruel bargain or the Countess's half-life of resistance. The first wolf emerged from the tunnel, not the silver alpha she had seen before, but a smaller black wolf with a scarred muzzle. It growled, baring yellowed fangs, but made no move to attack. 3 more wolves followed, forming a semicircle around her. The clock tower struck 1/4 to midnight. Eleonora backed away, moving deeper into the church ruins. The wolves followed cautiously, as if uncertain of her intentions. She noticed they were keeping their distance, not attacking, as she would have expected. Were they waiting for something? Her back pressed against an ancient stone altar, and inspiration struck. With nowhere else to retreat, she climbed atop the flat stone surface, kneeling there as waves of pain rolled through her body. The wolves formed a circle around the altar, their blue eyes fixed on her glowing birthmark. With trembling hands, Eleonora unfolded the tiny parchment from her grandmother's locket. The handwriting was spidery but legible in the bright moonlight. My dearest Eleonora, if you are reading this, then the curse and the gift of our bloodline has awakened in you. The Blackwood women have carried the wolf constellation for generations, though few have worn it as prominently as you. The Count will tell you that you must submit to him or suffer, but there is another way, the way of the true Alpha. The lock of hair belongs to my wolf. Not the Count's wolf, nor any wolf in his pack, but my wolf. I learned to separate the human from the beast while allowing both to exist in harmony. The transformation need not be a surrender of humanity, but an expansion of it. At the moment of change, hold the hair in your palm and declare yourself master of your own fate. Choose your own pack, choose your own path. The wolf is not a curse unless you make it one. With all my love, Grandmother. The clock tower began to toll midnight. Eleonora clutched the lock of silver-grey hair in her palm as the first toll reverberated through the ruins. The wolves around the altar howled in response, their voices rising to meet the bell's call. The second toll brought pain so intense she nearly blacked out, bones cracking, muscles tearing, skin stretching. The birthmark on her face spread, its silvery blue pattern extending across her entire body like frost on a winter window. With the third toll, Eleanora found her voice. "I am Eleanora Blackwood," she gasped. "Granddaughter of Margaret Blackwood. I choose my own fate." The fourth toll. Her spine arched unnaturally, vertebrae shifting, elongating. "I reject the Count's claim," she cried. "I reject his bond." Fifth toll. Her face began to reshape, bones cracking as her jaw extended. "I embrace the wolf." The words were becoming harder to form as her mouth changed, not as my master, but as my other self. Sixth toll. The wolves around the altar had fallen silent, watching with eerie stillness. "I choose." Eleanora's voice distorted into a growl. "I choose my own pack." The remaining 6 tolls blended together as Eleanora's human consciousness wavered. The transformation consumed her, pain beyond anything she had imagined possible. Her last human action was to close her fist tightly around her grandmother's silver-grey hair as darkness claimed her. When awareness returned, the world had changed. Scents assaulted her first, thousands of them, each telling a story. The ancient stones beneath her paws spoke of centuries of prayers and deaths. The river carried messages from miles upstream. The wolves surrounding her radiated emotions as distinct as colors: fear, curiosity, anticipation. Eleanora looked down at herself, seeing sleek, silver-white fur covering what had been human limbs. Her body was powerful, larger than the wolves around her, her senses impossibly sharp. But most remarkably, her human mind remained intact, separate from yet merged with new wolf instincts. She raised her muzzle to the moon and howled, a sound of freedom, of power, of claiming her birthright on her own terms. The wolves around the altar answered, their voices harmonizing with hers in a chorus that shook the ruins. All except one. A russet wolf at the edge of the circle growled, hackles raised in challenge. In a flash of insight that seemed to come from both her human knowledge and her wolf's instincts, Eleanora recognized one of the Count's loyal followers, perhaps even the wolf that had killed Lily's brother. The challenger lunged without warning, teeth aimed at Eleanora's throat. Her new body responded with supernatural speed, twisting aside and countering with a snap of powerful jaws. The russet wolf yelped, retreating a few steps before circling for another attack. This time, Eleanora met the challenge head-on. The wolves clashed in a blur of fur and fangs, a dance of dominance as old as time itself. Though she had never fought before, as human or wolf, Eleanora moved with instinctive precision, her grandmother's guidance somehow flowing through her veins alongside her Blackwood heritage. The fight ended as quickly as it began. The russet wolf lay pinned beneath her, throat exposed in surrender. Eleanora felt the wolf part of her urging her to finish the challenger, to kill and claim her position as alpha through blood. But her human mind intervened. She released the defeated wolf, which scrambled away to the edge of the circle, head lowered in submission. A message had been sent. She would fight to defend herself, but would not kill unnecessarily. Not like the Count's pack. A new howl reached them from the direction of Thornwick Abbey, deep, powerful, and filled with rage. The Count had survived the pack's attack and was coming for her. Eleanora made a decision. With a short bark that somehow conveyed her intention to the wolves around her, she leaped from the altar and raced toward the forest. The pack followed, not as her hunters, but as her followers. Somehow, impossibly, she had claimed them. Through the night they ran, her powerful legs carrying her effortlessly over fallen logs and across streams. The forest opened before her, revealing secrets invisible to human eyes. She sensed deer hiding in thickets, foxes in their dens, owls watching silently from ancient branches. Life surrounded her, more vibrant and interconnected than she had ever imagined. Near dawn, she led her new pack to a sheltered clearing deep in the forest. As the first grey light appeared on the horizon, Eleonora felt the change beginning again, the reverse transformation. The pain was less severe this time, as if her body, having made the journey once, knew the way back. When it was complete, she lay naked on the forest floor, her human form returned. The wolves circled her protectively, guarding their new alpha as she caught her breath. Among them was the silver-grey wolf she had first seen from her window, the former alpha who had led the rebellion against the Count. In his intelligent eyes she read acceptance and respect. "Thank you," she whispered, reaching out to touch his massive head. The wolf allowed the contact, pressing briefly against her palm, before withdrawing to the edge of the clearing with the others, giving her privacy. Eleonora stood on shaky human legs, wrapping her arms around herself against the morning chill. Her birthmark no longer glowed, but remained prominent on her skin, a reminder of her dual nature. Somehow she knew the transformation would come again, with the next full moon, and the next after that. But it would come on her terms, not as a curse or a surrender. A branch cracked at the clearing's edge. The wolves growled in unison, facing the sound. Eleonora tensed, expecting the Count, but instead, Caldwell emerged from the trees, carrying a bundle of clothing. "I thought you might need these," he said, averting his eyes as he handed her the bundle. "The boat's waiting downriver. Mrs. Thatcher and Lily are safe in the village." Eleonora dressed quickly. "The Count!" Caldwell's expression darkened. Alive but weakened. Most of his loyal pack turned against him last night. He will not recover his power quickly. "He'll come for me," Eleonora said with certainty. "Yes," Caldwell agreed. "But not today, and perhaps not for many tomorrows. You've done what no one has managed in 7 centuries. You've broken his absolute authority over the pack." The old man looked at the wolves surrounding them with wonder. "They've chosen you." "Not all of them," Eleonora noted. "Some must still be loyal to him. Enough have turned to weaken him significantly." Caldwell hesitated. "What will you do now?" Eleonora touched her grandmother's locket, still miraculously hanging around her neck. "First, I need to understand what I've become, what my grandmother discovered. There must be more to her story, more for me to learn." "There is," Caldwell confirmed. "She left journals, hidden from the Count. I can take you to them." "And then?" Eleonora looked at the wolves, her wolves now. "I can't simply return to human society, not with them, not with what I now am." "No," Caldwell agreed. "But neither must you isolate yourself as the Count did, growing bitter and cruel with passing centuries." He gestured to the east. "There are others like you, not many, but enough. People who carry the wolf constellation, who have found balance between human and wolf. Your grandmother knew them. They live in the mountains to the north, far from those who would not understand." Hope kindled in Eleonora's heart. "A community? Others who transform? A pack of a different sort," Caldwell said with a small smile. "Human and wolf, living in harmony with both natures." As the sun rose fully above the trees, Eleonora made her decision. She would go north, find these others, learn from them what her grandmother had discovered. She would master both aspects of her nature, find the balance that had eluded the Count in his obsession with power and the Countess in her desperate resistance. But first, there was something she needed to do. 3 days later, Eleonora stood at the edge of the village, Lily at her side, the silver-grey wolf hidden in the trees behind them. "Are you sure about this?" Eleonora asked gently. Lily nodded, her young face solemn but determined. "Thomas is gone. Mother is gone. I have no one else." "The path won't be easy," Eleonora warned. "Where I'm going, what I'm becoming, it's not a normal life." "I was never meant for a normal life," Lily replied with wisdom beyond her years. "Not after what happened to my family. And besides," she glanced at the wolf waiting in the shadows, "I'm not afraid of them anymore. Not since I saw you with them." Eleonora smiled, taking the girl's hand. Perhaps this was part of her grandmother's third path, not isolation like the Count, nor denial like the Countess, but connection. Building a pack that was both human and wolf, finding family among those who understood both sides of her nature. As they turned away from the village and walked toward the waiting wolf, Eleonora felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The mark on her face, once a source of shame and isolation, now represented liberation. She had been born with the wolf constellation etched into her skin, always meant for this transformation. But unlike the Count, she would never let the wolf consume her humanity. Unlike the Countess, she would never deny the wolf its freedom. She would walk between worlds, belonging to both, mastering both. Behind them, Thornwick Abbey stood dark and distant on the horizon, the Count still within its walls, weakened but not defeated. One day he would come for her. She knew this with bone-deep certainty. When he did, she would be ready, surrounded by her chosen pack, stronger in her dual nature than he could ever be in his isolation. The wolf howled from the trees, calling her forward. Lily squeezed her hand, unafraid. Together they walked toward the sound, toward the future, leaving the Gothic shadows of Thornwick behind for the wild promise of the mountains beyond. Eleonora Blackwood, human and wolf marked by stars, had found her path at last.